Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Wheeler, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober by the grace of God and the 36 spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous since January 1st, 2004. And for that, I am very grateful. Thank you all for that. Thank you, Summer, for the invitation. It's nice to see some people I know on here. And it's funny because I spoke somewhere in the last 2 months, and I spoke on step 7, and the person that introduced me said, now we have Jack and he's going to speak for an hour on step 7. And I can tell you that there's nobody in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous that has spoken for an hour on step 7. And I am going to talk about my experience with 6 and 7. And it's important for you to know who I am, because it's got a great deal of importance, my experience that led me to coming up on 6 and 7, understanding that my life depended on it. And I was taken to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 13 years old, and by a very astute school counselor. And I went in there and I saw all the gray-haired people, and I saw all the differences, as we do. Spiritual malady will separate me in any situation I'm in, because that's what it does. And the one important thing that I came out of there with is I understood that there was something called Alcoholics Anonymous, which became very important for me later on in life. And by the time I was 18 years old, I OD'd in the park in Aspen. I grew up in Aspen, Colorado. I'm in Carbondale, Colorado, which is approximately $4.5 million south of Aspen. That's where all the people that can't afford to live in Aspen live. And I came out of that night. I ended up in the hospital, and I came out of it terrified. It was a close call, and I ended up in treatment and in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I can tell you that I'm the guy that walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and all the gray-haired people were still there. And I'm 18 years old, and they read something out of the book, and it goes around the room, and everybody shares their experience with what we read out of the book, and will get to me, and I throw down about a bag of cocaine or Quaaludes or something just to piss off all the old timers. And that's how we roll. I'm 18 years old. I'm sitting in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm still trying to be the center of attention. And you know what everyone said to me? They said, keep coming back. And I did. And I'm not going to get into telling my story. I really want to talk about the steps. And but I had the experience that we have when we get separated from alcohol, and we come in and we find out about the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I stop drinking, and things get better in my life. And I got the girl, and I got married, and I had kids, and I got the business, and all things started going well. And I can tell you, Chuck C was right when he said that the only thing worse than bad fortune for an alcoholic of my type is good fortune. And I thought I could keep myself sober. That's the bottom line. And at 13 years of sobriety, I went back out and drank, because I cannot keep myself sober. You can give me all the information. I'm the guy. I can recite the big book to you. I can tell you exactly what it says on step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I can tell you how to write a correct inventory. I can tell you what it says about 5, 6, and 7. And I have no experience with it in my life. And I ended up drunk. I'd like to tell you that I'm the guy that, with all the information, that when I drank again, I came running back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is not my story. I could not get back, and I am powerless over this thing. And I was out for 10 years. And today I would say it's grace that I'm still here, and that I made it back, and I'll take it. And if grace is available, I highly recommend you accept it in your life. And And today, what I know is that I work the steps because my life depends on it. It says on page 59 in the book, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. And I used to read that as it's a suggested program of suggested steps. And what I'm telling you is it's a suggested program. If you choose to go to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, if you follow the suggestion, you're going to come into a room that has clear-cut direction. And if you follow the clear-cut direction, if you choose, if you take the suggestion to come into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, where I live, you're going to hear about the clear-cut directions. And those clear-cut directions lead me to a place where I have a change of heart. That I'm changed at my core. I'm changed at the substance of who I be. And today I know that my life depends on that transformation, and that the transformation isn't something that happens of information. Anytime somebody says, Jack's going to teach you something tonight, I'm very hesitant about that. I am not going to teach you anything. I'm going to share my experience and hope that one day you come to that place of desperation, that place of surrender that's born of desperation, not a decision. And that's the surrender in the first step that makes me willing to take these actions that make no sense to me. Your solution doesn't match my problem. And I hear that consistently with the men I sponsor today. And what it says on page 25, says the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. And I come into steps 6 and 7 from that place. I can't accomplish it. The journey into Alcoholics Anonymous is one of me trying to fix it again and again and again. The journey in Alcoholics Anonymous is me trying to fix it, playing God one more time, thinking that if I just manage this aspect of my life a little bit better, it's going to be okay. And my experience is that this whole process is a reduction of that. And that I'm looking for a change of heart and my life. I've heard people say that step 3, we turn our will and our lives over. What's our will and our lives? It's our thoughts and our actions. It's where my feet are and where my heart is. And that's the transformation that happens as we go through these steps. On page 27, I've been trying to figure out how to do it. Roland was trying to figure out how to do it, trying to figure out how to fix it. And he went to one of the most brilliant medical minds on the planet, one of the most brilliant men about the way my mind is wired, and said, what do I do? And Dr. Young said, nothing. I'm at a loss. Every now and then, once in a while, we think this is a phenomenon. Somebody has a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening sufficient to bring about recovery, and he didn't know how to do it. Right? That's what Young said to Roland. I don't know how to do it. And the cool thing is today, and the part that I think we miss all the time, is that if I am powerless, I need to tap into that power that Dr. Young was talking about. And the miraculous part of Alcoholics Anonymous is when Dr. Young said he couldn't do it, he didn't know how to bring it about. Today, we have a formula, a set of clear-cut directions for you to experience that spiritual awakening that Young said, I have no idea how to make it happen. When the book was published, Bill Wilson said the flying blind period ended. We had the recipe. The book was published. And I'm the alcoholic that will come in here and continue. My ego will continue to tell me to try and fix it, to try and manage it a little better. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work today. And the cool thing is I have that recipe. I have that clear-cut set of directions that it talks about in the book. On page 50, it says there has been a revolutionary change in the way of living and thinking. One more time, my thoughts and my actions have been changed. It doesn't say that I started doing things differently. It says a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. I am changed at my core, at the level of instinct, the level of natural reaction to, naturally taking actions that are outlined in this book. And on page 63, it says, we had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. And it goes on to say in the next however many pages that were blocked. While the idea, the contract in step 3, it is the solution to all my problems. I think step 3 is the entire solution to alcoholism. I also think it's impossible for a guy like me to be unblocked enough to live with the basis of God being my director. My ego is too large. My self-centeredness is too great unless it gets reduced. And we have the formula for reduction. And that's, we go through this inventory and we look at our lives in a way that I've never looked at it before. My alcoholism has me pointing at you. It's your fault. If you would just change, if you would do this. And the magnificent thing in the inventory process is I go from pointing at you, which if it's your fault, if it was true that if you changed, I'd be okay, I'd be doomed because I can't change you. And in the process of the inventory, it lands in my own shoes, lands in my own house. And it says, I am the problem. It says, this is my mistake. This is where I'm at fault. This is where I am to blame. And all of a sudden I can do something with that. The truth in my life hits me squarely in the heart for the first time ever. And I go through that process and I share it with another man. And in the process of sharing it, there's an awakening that happens because all of a sudden I'm not alone. I'm not unique. I stand in my shoes with alcoholism with all of you. And that gift of identification in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I think is so important is all of a sudden the truth of my life. That concession that I'm an alcoholic. But there's also an awareness that comes about that there's hope. Because in the 5th step, I got this guy that has this life that I'm looking for. He's laughing. He's got purpose. He seems to be well respected, and he's telling me this is what I did. And I come up on step 6 in that place. 6 and 7, I'm the guy that returning home for an hour. I never did that. I would get done with my sponsor in the 5th step and say, adios, thank you for sharing. I'm good. And just think that the unloading portion of the 4 and 5 was enough. And it's not. And here it tells me to take a hard look at the first 5 proposals. And a hard look at the first 5 proposals is laying those things that are objectionable to me, my self-centeredness, my grandiosity, my arrogance, my self-righteousness, and laying those things against the first 5 proposals. How is my grandiosity serving me? Am I powerless over it? I've been trying to fix it. I've been trying to live within a set of values my whole life and not being able to get it done. We all say it, I didn't mean to. I don't know how it happened. One more time, And the reality is that I've come to this place where I'm standing here with all of the information. And the cool thing is, I hear people all the time that are big book thumpers. They'll tell you, you just talk to them and they've got it memorized. And then they're telling me they made a list of all their character defects coming out of 6. And I'm telling you that if you do that, the book doesn't say to do that. I have a list. It's my inventory. I have an awareness. It's that awareness that came out from the truth of my life in step 5. I have the awareness that I'm not alone in this thing, that I'm not unique. This is a typical case of alcoholism. I'm not special. And I come at it and I lay these things against the first 5 proposals, and I find out. The good news is that I'm self-centered. I see it for the first time. The bad news is I can't fix it, and I want to. Story of my life. And I come to the place where I understand for the first time ever that I can't fix it. I can't fix it. If I could fix it, I wouldn't be in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I could bring about that change of heart, the transformation of living and thinking that I just shared, or the process along the way that happens, I wouldn't be in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do it because that's the only thing that has ever brought about sustained change. I am a recovered man in Alcoholics Anonymous today. And the reality is that is in spite of Jack, not because of Jack. It's because of the power of God. And there's no other way to lay it out. I have never been able to keep myself sober. That was the infuriating part of this thing. I could recite the big book to you, and I couldn't affect it in my own life. And I would come up on 6 and I'd say, oh yeah, well, of course, God, please remove my grandiosity. What it says is I'm supposed to abandon self. I can't fix it. And there's 4 things, I think, that the book tells us in that paragraph. It tells you to look at, is it objectionable to you? Are you tired of it? Do you not like that part of your soul? And I can tell you that I don't. It is objectionable to me. The second thing it asks me is, are you willing to have God remove it, change it? Can you fix it? So I'm left with those 3 propositions. Is it objectionable to you? Can you fix it? How's that going? And are you willing to let God? And the 4th one is the catch. Are you willing to let God any way that God sees fit? Not the way you want it fixed. The greatest thing that ever happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous is I didn't get what I wanted. I got an experience as a result of working the steps that's personal to me, that allows me to be recovered from alcoholism. And I didn't get what I wanted. I got so much more. If I would have gotten what I wanted, I would have sold God short. I think we sell God short in the 6th step when we come at it from that we think we know the information. And what the book asks us to do is become willing to let God change us. That's what the 6th step says. I was entirely ready to have God, not Jack, remove it. And are you really, is that the place you come out step 6 from? Today it is for me. I don't spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out what the character defects are. I know the truth in my life that I've outlined in 4 and 5 is unacceptable to me. It's the pebble in my shoe that I can't quite get rid of, but it's got my attention. And I come down in step 7. I can remember going to my sponsor at one point in time and telling him, he'd ask me, you know, he's a good sponsor. He'd say, how's step 7 going? He wouldn't let me just coast. And I tell him, fine, Don, very good. Praying the prayer. And finally one day I said to him, Don, step 7 sucks. I have no idea what to do. I don't know, you know, what's the action in step 7? And he said, Jack, he said, there is action. He said, there's 2 things in step 7. God has a role in step 7. God's job is to remove what's blocking you. God's job is to remove whatever's in the way of usefulness to him and your fellows. That's God's job. He said to me, your job is to act as if he did. And I thought he was telling me to act as if I didn't have any character defects. And that is an effort in futility. You can't do it. If your ego's like my ego, your self-centeredness is at the depth of my self-centeredness, you can't act like your way out of character defects. And I couldn't. And I realized after a while, what he was telling me was to act as if God's the power. Act as if God is the power. My single greatest character defect, my drinking, was removed like that. One minute I didn't have a sobriety date, and the next minute I had a sobriety date. Instantly, it was removed. I have experienced in recovery character defects being removed just like that. They've never tugged on my shirt tail again. I've also experienced the ones that continue to tug on my shirt tail. And I continue to have to think that I'm giving them to God. And the cool thing is, God is the power. And the minute I realized that, everything changed. That's all Don was asking me to do, is to act as if God's the power. Act as if he removed it. And when I come out from that place, the humility that's talked about in step 7 is automatic. I have never been able to lay them down, manage them, make it better. And I have these things in my life where I've seen God work. That's the great thing about this. I can't teach it to you. You got to experience it. I'll walk you through the big book. I'll share my experience with the big book. But at some point, you're going to experience that removal. And you're going to be out there on the front lines saying, yay, God. I hope you don't get what you want in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because we can't even imagine the lives we get. We can't even imagine it. And the process, it's funny. I spent the last 35 years, my whole life on a ranch. And my parents had an outfitting company, and we'd take big game hunting and fishing trips and horseback trips, and we'd be out hunting, and we'd hunt all day long, and then we'd go back to camp at night, and the guides would all get together, and we'd have to go out in the middle of the night and get the game that was harvested that day, and quarter it and take care of it and make sure it was handled with the respect it deserves. And we get out there, and without fail, somebody had to hold the flashlight, and somebody had to deal with the work. And I think that today I have 2 roles in the 7th step. And sometimes it's my prayers, and it's my life, and other times it's someone else's life. And in that time, nobody wanted to hold the flashlight. Everybody wanted to do the work. And what I've learned in my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous, sometimes the most important thing I do is hold the flashlight for someone else. And in that is the power of God. I have been changed to where sometimes the most important thing is your recovery. And in that process where we go from the trying to fix myself for myself to turning it over in step 7 and doing exactly what it says in the prayer. In that it says when we're ready, we say something like this: my creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Nowhere does it say remove the things that are going to make Jack's life wonderful. You're not going to get the money. You're not going to get, and that's what I want. Left to myself, I'd take it, you know. And what it's saying is remove whatever's in the way. Nowhere does it say, please give me your list of character defects that you want me to work on. It says remove anything in the way. Anything between you and me and God, remove it. And I can tell you, if I try and give you that list, I'll get it wrong every time. Every single time. What this is, and I said before that the third step is the entire solution to alcoholism. My granddaughter Mike's heard this story about 4,000 times. I like the story. And my granddaughter when she was 4 years old, I said to Abigail is the love of my life. And I said to Abigail, I said, what's your favorite color? And Abigail said, well, my favorite color, Grandpa, is orange. I said, that's nice, Abigail. What's your second favorite color? And Abigail said, Grandpa, my second favorite color is orange. Of course it is. Orange is available. But of course, I'm expecting another color. And what struck me that day was, why would there be another color? Orange is available. And my experience with the third step is I'm distracted and I want another color. And my granddaughter's right on. What's your favorite solution, Jack? God. God is my favorite solution. What's your second favorite solution? My second favorite solution is God, because it's available. It's all available right here. And I keeping up. Abigail's 8 now. And last year I asked her, I tell the story a lot, so I wanted to see what she'd say. And I said to Abigail, what's your favorite color, Abigail? She said, my favorite color, Grandpa, is orange. And I said, Abigail, what's your second favorite color? She said, Grandpa, my second favorite color is chocolate. And it's the worldly clamors, right? I'm good with chocolate. I can buy a chocolate, you know, and sometimes that's how I am. My favorite solution is God. My second favorite solution is money today, you know, or chocolate. And I have this program that if I'm doing this program right, it takes care of me and brings me back to orange, because orange is available. God's available. And so when we talk about step 7, there's 2 things that have to happen. I have to trust God. I have to go to God and become God reliant. I have to lay down my will. And the minute I do that, I'm living in step 3. And I think the best atmosphere, Chris and I talked about this one weekend together. The best atmosphere for step 7 in my life. What do you do at step 7? You do 8 through 12. If you want step 7 to hold, to take effect in your life, it's not a 7-step program. It's not a 3-step program. We're trying to get to God in a way that transforms our heart, our lives, and our thinking. That's what all I read to you earlier from the book, the experience of the first 100, was they had a change of heart that you can't deny it. They had a change of life. Their life changed in everything they were doing. And they had a change of thinking as a result of God. and experience a spiritual awakening. And if they're anything like me, one day they woke up and they said, Jesus Christ, it's been a long time since I thought about drinking. How does that happen? All of a sudden, I'm the guy that Summer will call me and say, hey, looking forward to seeing you tonight. And I'll say, well, Summer, I had you down for September 2nd. And she'll say, well, I don't have anybody tonight. And I'm okay with tonight because this is a program of service. My spiritual responsibility, not my desire, not my wishes, is that I'm to be of service to this thing. Chris and I were talking before the meeting, and he's talking about something I said before, but I say it all the time, is that in this process, and I think 6 and 7 is that turning point for us to where it's just a theory until I come from that place of life and death. And I become God reliant. And all of a sudden I go from that guy that's completely self-conscious. Everything that goes on in my world is weighed against my self-consciousness, to a guy that becomes God conscious. And everything in my world is laid against the power of God. And I think that happens in steps 8 through 12. That's where it hits the road. It's all theory until then. Even in step 6 and 7, I couldn't understand that I wanted the transformation to happen then. And little did I know it did, because I was put in a place of surrender, of God reliance, of self-abandonment to move into 8. And then to actually make my amends, to go stand in front of those people and say, I was wrong. I harmed you. You want to see step 7 on the road? You want to see what it looks like to live with God as the guide for my will and my life? That's what it looks like. I go and make the amends, even when I don't want to, because my life depends on it. And I say that with some trepidation today, because the reality is I'm not doing this because my life depends on it today. It's been a long time since I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because I needed a meeting. I go today because somebody else's life might rely on it. You know, the reality is that if we don't carry the message, who will? You know, it's our spiritual responsibility to carry the good news, to let the guy that's dying, that can't see it, that absolutely has no idea that this thing's about God reliance, that we lack the power. He's still trying to fix himself just like I was. And then we get into step 10. And if it's true that God is the one that changes me, God is the one that removes my character defects, God is the one that takes care of my shortcomings, God is the one that I've turned my will and my life over to, then step 10 becomes, I said the contract in step 3 is to stay close to him and perform his work well. How do you stay close to him? I stay close to you. I pray, I meditate, I follow the directions in the book. But I have news for you. It was enlightening for me to find out that while the book is enough, while the directions in the book are enough, they're the bare minimum for a guy like me. And I'll walk around saying I do step 10 like this, and I do step 11 like this, and go Jack, give me the extra credit pin. And what I found is it's the bare minimum. And that's the good news, because if you have an experience with this thing, you want more. And I read spiritual literature, and I spend more time with people, not just people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm of service in my community. And step 11 is staying close to him. You know, step 11 is doing his work well. Step 11 is the evening review is nothing but a check in my 10th step. Am I actually walking through the day, watching for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear? That's what the direction says. And I'm the guy that will sit in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and say, yeah, step 10, I make amends quickly if I need to. what I found is if you actually follow the directions and you learn to watch your own feet instead of everyone else, there's less damage. I become more effective. All of a sudden, I can see when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear crop up. And remember, those 4 things are the things we were talking about in the inventory that block me from God in step 3 and block me from actually relying upon God in my life in step 7. So in order to have this ongoing experience where God is reducing the self-centeredness, reducing the character defects and the shortcomings, I have to be engaged in 10 and 11. I have to be watching for those things. That's my responsibility. I have to be taking time in prayer and meditation to stay close to him. I was getting ready to go to a jail meeting, and I'm walking through the house, and I got my big book in my hand, and my granddaughter's there, Abigail. And she says, "Grandpa, where are you going?" I said, "Well, Abigail, I'm going to talk to God." I was just being smart aleck to her. I was going into jail. And she said, "Grandpa, we don't talk to God." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She said, "We listen to God." And I think if we come at step 6 and 7 the way it's outlined in the book, and our reliance shifts to God's the solution, 100%. Lack of power is my dilemma. Power is the solution. I'm gonna listen. And I get it backwards sometimes. My ego stands up and says, "Hey, what about me?" And I can do that from a spiritual hilltop, and rattle on this thing about how much I know. And the reality is that I need to listen. And in step 11, I'm spending time with the power. And I highly recommend that. It keeps me connected so that when the opportunity comes, and recently I had one of the guys I sponsored call me, and his life's blowing up one more time. And the cool thing is I can sit with him and tell him that it's not your fault, man. They're wrong. And tell him that doesn't matter, because I've been in a situation where I've been in my sponsor's house. And I've said to him point blank, this sucks. This is going on in life, and it's real. It's happening. And my sponsor said to me, he said, sometimes it feels like they're coming after you. They got you in the sights, and they're coming after you. I said, "Yes, that's exactly how it feels right now, Don." He said, "Jack, well, that's because they are." That's why it feels that way. And there's 2 things that nobody can touch, because they're God-given. He said they can't touch your sanity, and they can't touch your sobriety. You got to push them across the bar to them, because they're God-given. And that's my experience. And I get to share that with this guy that's going through it, and they're coming after him, right or wrong. And he doesn't get to stand up and be a victim. He gets to understand that his sanity and his sobriety are God-given. And all he needs to do is keep doing this and carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he'll be safe and protected. Problem has been removed. And if the problem has been removed, what's up with my character defects? They're gone. They've been tamped to a level where my eyeball isn't stuck on them. I can be an effective member of my family. I can be an effective grandfather. Those types of things don't happen to a guy like me. It happens as a result of steps 6 and 7 and understanding that I can't fix this thing. I've been trying. The story of the madness of alcoholism is me trying to fix me one more time. And we end up in this place where all of a sudden I'm good. I was sitting with a group of guys I don't know if a few months ago, everybody was checking in, and they asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm content. Are you content? If not, go through the steps with a man that has been through the steps or a woman that has been through the steps, and have a current experience with this thing. Because I can tell you right now, we need you on the front lines of Alcoholics Anonymous, carrying the message. I mean, if you spend any amount of time looking at the news, which I try not to, world's divided. It's a mess out there. And it's not in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because we have the singleness of purpose. We have, when I talk about character defects, you're all shaking your head. And I'll be the guy that'll write another inventory and come to my sponsor and say it's fear. And he'll say, no, it's not. It's self-centeredness, Jack. Oh no, this time it's fear. We want to point at something. That's why we're so intent on making a list at step 6 and saying, these are my 5 character defects. It's self-centeredness. I have an ego that will not shut up. So in the process that we're talking about here today, I become disconnected. I become less attached. I can say to my ego, thank you for sharing, and go about my day and be an effective member of my family, an effective member of my business, effective member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I do that, the more I do it, the less boxes there are in my life. I'm the same guy on both sides of my front door. I'm the same guy on both sides of the Lord's Prayer. And it took me a long time to get there. You know, it took me a long, I had to have the experiences I had to get there. And I think steps 6 and 7, done the way that it's laid out in our book, it honors us having to have that experience. And then all of a sudden I can go out and I can stand in front of you and say, I was wrong, I harmed you. I can say to a new guy, I have an answer for you. It worked for me. There's no reason it won't work for you. And in that place, I become whole. You know, in 6 and 7, I think the biggest holdup I had for a long time was it seemed like the perfect ideal. It seemed like that I was trying to hold up a perfect ideal. And I've been told in Alcoholics Anonymous that we're all human and that there's no perfection in human. And the reality is while perfection is the goal, Bill wrote about it in some of his writings, while perfection is the goal here, I want to be perfectly God's guy. I want to be effective and useful in Alcoholics Anonymous. The part I need to remember is that while I will tell myself that I can't be perfect, that I'm human, that there's perfection in the humanness, what I need to remember is underachievement is not a virtue in that. And I'm the guy, like the guy sitting at the bar, well, I may as well get good and drunk now. Well, I may as well live with that character defect because it's been a real pain in the ass to get rid of. And we continue to come back to that ideal of perfection. And I think that's the journey here. I think that was one of the biggest frustrations Bill had. And what I can tell you is my experience has been, is there is perfection in the human condition. We are exactly what we're supposed to be right now. And my experience with this process is I'm the guy that my kids didn't trust, my wife didn't trust, like I didn't trust. I didn't think I could stay sober. I didn't think I could tell the truth. And I've become the guy that they rely on. Everybody in my family, something comes up, they call me. And I cherish that at some level. And it's not from a place of ego. It's from the place of how could I get here? what a great gift. And my wife and I had a houseboat on Lake Powell for a number of years. And every year we'd do a sober trip down to Lake Powell, and the kids would come, and our sponsors would come, and the sponsors' wives or husbands would come, and our posse would show up, and all their kids. And we do what we do, we play in the sun for 5 days. And we'd get up in the morning and we'd pray on the beach together. And then we'd play games all day and just have fun. And then we'd do a gratitude meeting, a bonfire meeting on the beach in the evening. And we'd all, we do what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And I'm cleaning up one day, getting ready to pull off and head back to the marina. It's the last day of the trip, so I'm running around the houseboat cleaning things up, and I'm sliding down the side of the houseboat. And it's just a little alleyway down the side, and I can hear the kids up on the roof. And the kids were up on the roof, and this is what I hear them say. They're up there, and I hear them say, "You're the chairperson, you're the sponsor, you're the new guy, you're the Al-Anon." And they're up on the roof of the houseboat playing Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And I think if we're doing it so well that the kids are copying us, we're right where God wants us. And if I'm right where God wants us, 6 and 7's in the bag. Thank you.